Hi, this topic is about intercultural communication. Now, we all understand that we work in a globalized world. So we don't live in the same place as we were born. We travel, we go to college, we go to universities, we get educated, we find jobs, and then we transition to different parts of the world as our career takes us different pathways. We meet definitely people from different cultures. And even at the workplace, we have to deal with teams that are intercultural. And so, understanding intercultural communication, the challenges that we face, and the importance of navigating intercultural space in a successful way will determine how successful you are in your own career. That introduction, we can just go and understand the definition, the nature of intercultural communication, a couple of theories which explain intercultural communication in depth, and obviously, which will reinforce the importance of intercultural communication. Now, because as I said, globalization, businesses are expanding internationally, and what might seem pretty obvious from how we deal with today's businesses, we are interconnected. More people from different cultures interact more frequently, which means even if it is customers from elsewhere, we are talking to customers from different parts of the world. And it's important that we understand their cultures. We're sensitive to their cultures. If it's our own employees within an organization, because we have global locations, we have global presence, we are also interconnected in the sense that we have a global workforce, people coming from different cultures, and we have to interact with not just employees that we see every day, but employees in other parts of the world in different branches and different locations of the same business. The workplace has become definitely diverse because we are having exactly what I just described, a very inclusive workforce, a globalized workforce where mobility of employees, talent is no more a problem. We see people travel very frequently across the globe, work with different teams within the same organization, but in different countries and different regions. And we have to be aware that these kind of cultural differences can lead to misunderstandings and conflict. And knowing that intercultural communication is important, knowing different elements and aspects of how cultures differ, and appreciating those cultural differences makes us more sensitive, getting us an opportunity to work with employees from different cultures in a more effective way, and making sure we do not let conflict or misunderstandings stop our work, reduce the efficiency or efficacy of what we are planning to do. It can help us collaborate and build teamwork. And then obviously, we want to achieve the goals that we intend to achieve together, realizing the effect of synergy. We also have multicultural societies, whether it's in education or in healthcare or in everyday life. We are always communicating with people from different cultures. And understanding cultural differences, being sensitive, as I said, is very important for fostering harmony, collaboration, the spirit of cooperation and collaboration, making sure you take in the diverse opinions of people from different cultures, respecting those cultural differences in different communities. It's a great learning experience when you understand cultures are there for a good reason. They are from ages, and because we belong to different cultures, we bring in different perspectives of the same issue, of the same problem. It gives us a great opportunity to learn from each other. If you look at how multicultural societies operate today, with the presence of technology and virtual communication, it's even more easy that you can connect with employees, co-workers from different parts of the globe across using technology and virtual communication tools. And therefore, digital globalization makes it even more imperative that we have the right set of intercultural communication skills, the sensitization to cultural differences, the kind of empathy that we require to appreciate other cultures, the acceptance of other cultures, whether it's using verbal communication, oral communication, face-to-face communication, or through emails, video calls, and social media interactions, understanding the context and cultural aspects of the nature of a communication can only make us much more successful because we understand, appreciate diverse opinion, innovative ways of looking at the same problem, different perspectives, and take on the same issue. And because of that, we're able to realize the effect of synergy, work in teams in a collaborative spirit, avoid misunderstandings, overcome conflict in constructive ways, and we can definitely be successful. Now, culture per se, by definition, refers to the shared values, norms, customs, and beliefs that influence the way we look at things, we look at the world, and we look at each other, and the way we communicate with one another. Because we have different set of values and norms and customs and beliefs as we grow up. So me being an Indian, for example, I'm more, familiar with Indian values, norms, customs, traditions, and belief systems. Whereas if I just move to, say, the Middle East, it'll make more sense for me to understand the culture in the Middle East, appreciate their values, norms, customs, and beliefs, be sensitive, be respectful to what I see from the Middle East itself, gives me a fair chance to be successful, not just as a professional, not just as an employee, but even at the personal level. I can make friends, I can network better because I appreciate, understand, respect, recognize, and know how to work with the values, norms, and customs and beliefs in the Middle East. I just gave you an example because I worked 10 years in the Middle East. I have great friends, a wonderful experience in the Middle East, both in Jordan and the United Arab Emirates. Those kind of experiences I'll never forget because what actually made me successful, build those bonds of friendship, is because of my appreciation and understanding of the values, norms, and customs and beliefs in the two countries that I just mentioned. Now, communication as a process involves exchange of information, ideas, and interactions between individuals. It can be an exchange of information, ideas, and solving problems in teams. And it also involves nonverbal channels of communication like the choice of words, tone, gestures, facial expressions, the way we sit, the way we talk, the way we shake hands, and certain body movements. All that becomes part and parcel of nonverbal communication as well. There's a third C that we need to be aware of when we talk about intercultural communication is the situation that we call as the context. Now, the context in which communication occurs is extremely important. If it's a formal context that you're talking to a boss, talking to your manager, it's a very formal setting. And it might have informal aspects when you meet at a coffee shop, you're meeting in the cafeteria. It might get a bit informal, but also that you are aware of the situation and how situations can transition between being formal or informal gives you a better understanding of what to say, how to say, the choice of words, the language, the posture, the nonverbal communication. Now, building cultural awareness is extremely important because we got to understand our own cultural biases and how they would affect my communication. For example, if I went to a conference, an international conference in New York, and if I kind of, because of my cultural biases, I look for other Indian presenters and delegates, that might make sense because it is easy for me to go and strike a conversation, break the barriers, and it's easy for me to gel with somebody who's familiar with Indian tradition, values, beliefs, and culture itself. But if I want to really benefit from attending this conference in New York, I better be aware that I have this cultural bias towards other Indians and I want to actually interact with others who are not Indians as well. Because it's as much I can learn from my Indian colleagues and delegates at the conference, I should appreciate and be willing to understand that if I talk to people from other cultures, delegates from other cultures, I give myself a greater opportunity for me to learn more and to understand better from different perspectives. So if I went and spoke to somebody from Turkey as a researcher, I get to understand the same organizational behavior topic, which is of a common interest in research for both of us. I understand how this researcher from Turkey thinks differently from the way I think and approach this particular topic in organizational behavior. Enhancing interpersonal relationships, effective intercultural communication can only build trust and stronger bonds between individuals, between employees who might come from different cultural backgrounds, but they kind of appreciate, understand, respect each other, for which they're willing to listen, for which they're willing to learn from each other. And therefore, you start seeing a lot of innovative things happening, and work is achieved in an effective and efficient manner. For example, I have great friends in the institutions that I've worked who are from Korea but have lived long enough in the United States. I've had friends from China but have lived in the United States as well. I've had friends who are from Turkey, from Burma, from other parts of the world. So, New York being a melting pot for different cultures gives unique opportunities for us to understand cultural diversity, appreciate cultural differences, be sensitive to each other, and help each other in terms of understanding, learning from each other, in getting the job done in a very creative, innovative way. I'm going to present to you a particular framework for understanding culture. Hofstede did his research in IBM many, many years ago, and his research found out there are several cultural dimensions that we must be aware of as individuals or as employees or managers or leaders in an organization to figure out how are people thinking and why are they thinking a particular way. This gives you a sense of understanding of what you want to say, how you want to say it, and be effective in your communication process itself. So the first cultural dimension that Hofstede mentions is power distance. It actually is a measure to the kind of employees who are involved in a particular organization, to the extent to which less powerful members of a society accept and expect power to be distributed unequally. So, for example, high power distance in societies like China and India, where pretty much the societies are hierarchical, there's a lot of perception of power being distributed unequally. And there's where authority is respected and not questioned. That's where we call high power distance exists. And the examples that you have are of China and India, where there's high power distance. Employees perceive that power is actually distributed unequally, and in these countries where authority is respected and not to be questioned. The opposite case of low power distance is when egalitarian societies like countries in Scandinavia, where power is distributed more equally, there is not much of a perception of power distance between different levels of the organization or different strata of the society itself. So that perception changes how frequently communication happens. It changes the way we talk in teams. It changes the way we approach in our emails. Because if I'm from India, where high power distance is there, it'll be my inclination to address somebody with more formal way of addressing, calling them sir. That happens because I've grown for many years, lived a long time in India, and I perceive high power distance. But then when I move to the United States, the kind of perception of power distance is much lower. I could call somebody by their first name. They don't expect me to address them as sir. And it's more informal type of communication. I could just have a one-line email communication, whereas in India, I would have to have a proper paragraphs, a proper salutation, a sign off, warm regards, sincerely, and all that is required for every piece of communication. The second dimension that Hofstede talks about, which is related to cultural communication or intercultural communication, is societies and cultural aspects which are driven by individualism and collectivism. So individualistic cultures, such as in the case of US and UK, focus a lot more on individual achievement and independence. So obviously, individuals have to be more, boisterous. They need to talk more. They need to talk about their achievements and accomplishments because individual, achievements, recognition, appreciation is valued more. In a collectivist culture like Japan and China, there's a lot more emphasis on group effort, team building, collaborative spirit, harmony, family ties, and teamwork. So obviously, in these cultures, it will not be appropriate if I say, hey, I did this versus I did that. It's all about me. No, it's about us, it's about we. So in individualistic cultures, it's not inappropriate that you see a lot of people using I a lot and talking about what they have done. Perhaps it's required that you have to talk about what you did in specific for you to get the recognition and the opportunities that you're looking for. But in collectivistic cultures, it's important that you talk about your team, you talk about the work group itself, and what you've done in collaborative spirit, and what you have achieved in a collectivistic way for you to get appreciation and the opportunities that you're looking for. There is the third dimension that Hofstede talks about, culture and cultural dimension, which is masculinity versus femininity. So masculine cultures like in Germany and Japan, they value competitiveness, assertiveness, and success that is more material. So that kind of culture where everybody in the society values more of competition, that you have to showcase how assertive you are, how decisive you are, and what kind of material accomplishments have you been able to achieve, because those cultures value these aspects of being a masculine culture. Now, feminine cultures, on the other hand, like in Sweden and the Netherlands, they value some values like cooperation, quality of life, and caring for the weak and not so properly represented groups of the largest society. So these are feminine cultures where you're not driven by competition or being assertive, or not driven by material success, but you are driven by values of cooperation, quality of life, and caring of the weak. So that's feminine cultures like in Sweden and Netherlands. There's another dimension of Hofstede in terms of understanding culture is how cultures handle ambiguity and uncertainty. Now, cultures that are high on uncertainty avoidance want to avoid uncertainty, like in Greece and Portugal. They prefer everything to be structured in terms of environments, have clear set of policies, rules, and guidelines, and clear expectations. Nothing wrong with that. It's just one of the attribute of their culture. So if you were to work with a team that has members from Greece or Portugal or similar countries which are high on uncertainty avoidance, you've got to focus your communication on having a structure in place, creating policies and rules and clear expectations, or else it'll be hard to have that kind of collaborative teamwork and get the work done, because they are driven by a cultural dimension called high uncertainty avoidance. Then there are countries where you have low uncertainty avoidance, and they're more comfortable with flexibility, they take more risk, and they are more prone to having innovation and thinking outside the box. And the examples here in the slide that you see here are Denmark and Singapore. So if you're working with team members who are from Denmark and Singapore, for instance, you got to understand they're pretty much more flexible. They want you to take some measured risk and think outside the box in innovative and creative methods. You get the appreciation because they are driven by low uncertainty avoidance, and they value flexibility, risk taking, and innovation. Apart from Hofstede's cultural dimension that we just listened to, the fourth, and this is the fifth one, where it's long term versus short term orientation. Cultures that are driven by long term orientation, like in China and Japan, they focus on future rewards, perseverance, and frugality. So obviously, they're thinking about long term saving. They're talking about 5 year planning. They have a long term aspects of planning and making sure resources are available. They believe in perseverance. They won't give up easily. That's the long-term culture, long-term oriented cultures that you find in China and Japan. The short-term oriented cultures like in the US and Canada, they focus on immediate results, tradition, and quick gains. So if you're working with, say, a boss from the US, you got to understand that they want immediate result. They're very pragmatic, action-driven. They want to see quick results, and outcome orientedness is very strong in US and in Canada, because their cultures are more driven by the value of being short-term oriented ways of looking at things. So apart from these Hofstede's cultural dimensions, you also have another researcher, Edward Hall, who talks of another cultural dimension called high context versus low context cultures. Now, high context cultures you have like Japan and Arab countries, where communication is heavily driven on nonverbal cues, shared experiences, underlying context, more of the emotional side of it, the feeling side of it. Less is said in terms of explicit words, but meaning is often between the lines. There is a subtle way of communicating because it's driven by feelings, emotions, and shared experiences. These cultures are termed as high context cultures. On the other hand, low context cultures like in the US and in Germany, communication is more direct. Information is conveyed primarily through explicit words. Messages are clear and straightforward, with very little room and scope for interpretation or between the lines kind of assessment. So it's very straightforward in countries like US and Germany because they're pretty much low context cultures. So these are the cultural aspects that you see that are extremely important while understanding how we communicate, how we perceive others or co-workers. And when we actually have expatriate assignments and have to work elsewhere outside of your own home country, understanding cultural dimensions, the differences in cultures, being aware intercultural communication is an important aspect for you to be successful at work, both professionally and in your personal space. You have to figure out ways that you will learn, you be aware, you practice good intercultural communication, You work on it every single day. You're observant, you watch, and you're making sure that you're not offending anybody's feelings. You're appreciative of their values, beliefs, customs, and traditions. And in this way, you do not create misunderstandings. You try to overcome situations that are of conflicting nature, and you avoid a lot of emotional aspects that are really not required for you to deal with because you focused on work. You can prioritize goals and you can make work happen in more effective and efficient ways. So, with that said, we can actually draw a conclusion to our topic on intercultural communication. Thank you.